So Katie, this is about Enron. Tell me, what is the Enron story?
The Enron story is so interesting. The Enron story is the largest case of corporate fraud in American history.
What happened?
That's what it is. So Enron was an energy trading company that in around the year 2000 or so was one of the top 10 largest companies in America. Huge company. They had their fingers in all kinds of different projects. And by the middle of 2002, it was gone. It was bankrupt. There were dozens of people in jail. There was billions of dollars, tens of thousands of people's jobs that were poof. And as you might suspect, when something like this happens, a multi-billion-dollar company just collapses. It didn't happen totally organically. There was a lot of fraud that was going on underneath the surface. In some ways, it was amazing that the company didn't go bankrupt even earlier than that, considering how much fraud was going on.
Well, that's super interesting. So why is it relevant for this class?
It is relevant for this class because, as it turns out, Enron has had sort of a second life in the form of one of the most famous data sets of all time, and the data set that we'll be using sort of to motivate a lot of our projects in the rest of this class. It's called the Enron Corpus, and it's tens of thousands of emails, hundreds of thousands of emails.
So real emails by real people.
Real emails by real people. It's as far as I'm aware, the biggest corpus of real emails that sort of exist in the wild.
It exists in the open, I guess.
In the open, that's right, because emails are usually so confidential, right? And so it's been used for many, many different purposes, and we'll be using it to answer a very interesting question in this class. I want to use this corpus to try to figure out if there are patterns within the emails of people who were persons of interest in the fraud case, to see if we can identify those patterns.
So these are like real emails by real people,
Yeah.
and if they have an affair, you'll find it in the email, and if they misappropriated money, you'll find it in the email. So
Yes,
we're going to
yes.
see all of this.
Oh, you see everything. In fact, one of the things that was very interesting to me, as I was learning about sort of the Enron fraud case, and I was reading newspaper articles and watching documentaries, you get a sense for some of these individuals and exactly the roles that they were playing in this fraud. And then to go in and actually read their emails is a very weird experience. So yes, it's
So that's the
real.
case of the past, right? But this machine learning is obviously about the future. Why is it interesting to go to this email corpus and find patterns of fraud? Like,
Well,
who would care?
The thing that I love about this project is while this data set has been out in the world and very famous for the last decade or so, no one's ever actually tried to answer this particular question. Can we identify patterns in the emails of people who are...
Who would care about this? Is the NSA? Are you working for the NSA?
I think it's a really interesting question. That's the thing, is that this is, at least for my case, it's a case of curiosity. Of course, if you were some kind of forensic machine learning expert, this might actually not be a case of the past for you. You might be really interested in trying to answer this question. It might have real world implications. For me, I'm just perversely curious.
So Katie, you've done experiments on the data already on your
I've done
own.
a lot.
So
Yes.
what did you do? What worked? What didn't work?
Well, that's basically going to be what I'll be teaching for the rest of the class. I'll be a lot of the projects, all of the mini projects, in fact, are going to be coming back to this Enron corpus as I'm trying to understand things about it and using different machine learning techniques to attack it from different angles. I've done a lot of smart things and I've done a lot of very stupid things, and I've learned in the process of this exercise. So one thing that I will be doing also from here on out is pointing out some of the places where I've done something that I didn't realize at first but was kind of stupid, and how I figured out what my mistake was and how I caught it. So my hope is that this is a little bit of watching a machine learning exercise in practice, that in some ways I am 2 steps ahead of you, kind of macheteing my way through the jungle, but that the students are there 1 step behind me, and they're sort of watching my thought process as it's unfolding, as I'm trying to answer this question.
So what do you think the students will learn from this data, and where do you think they can apply it?
It's an incredibly rich data set, and there's a lot of places where we'll be talking about things that have broad application. So the things we'll be addressing in this coming few lessons, for example, we'll be talking about regressions. So using regressions, I was able to understand the relationship between the salaries of the people in Enron and their bonuses, and see if there were any interesting relationships there. As it turns out, I'm not sure that it has a lot of implication for the fraud, but it was something that I found very interesting. We'll be looking at clustering. You can use clustering on the data, which is a type of unsupervised learning. It's a very interesting algorithm to figure out who within this organization was a member of the board of directors and who was just a regular employee. we'll be using outlier detection and removal to find certain lines in the data set that were bugs, basically, that were outliers that I had to go in and clean out manually to make sure that we were getting sensible results from our data, stuff like that.
Great, great. And students, will they basically watching you do this, or will they do it themselves?
A little bit of both. There are places where there's something that I would wrestle with for many days at a time before I finally figured out what was going wrong. So my hope is that they will not be wrestling quite as hard, that as I've learned some of these things, I can point them in the right direction. But for the most part, it will be replicating the steps that I've been following and coming up with the answers to the questions that I've been curious about.
And in terms of the skills a student learn by doing this, the skills that they can take on in their professional lives, like what are other examples? Because the Enron data set is like one in a decade, and it's a specific one that was made public with some specific legal action.
Right.
Like what other things today can the students use it for once they've taken this specific example?
Well, it's a lot of the topics that we'll be covering, we'll be using Enron as a use case, but of course that's not the only use case for any of these things. So let's use the example of clustering. So I said that clustering we'll be using to identify the difference between people on the board of directors and ordinary employees at Enron. But clustering is something, we have an interview coming up with a vice president at Netflix who's very involved in their machine learning. And at Netflix, what they do with clustering is they actually identify particular types of people by their movie choices. And so they can have clusters of users that they say, here's the, 25 to 35-year-old men who like to watch action movies and comedies. Here's the children who like to watch Disney movies. Here's the women who like to watch romances. And these, based on these clusters, they can figure out who their
You're telling us
customers
by
are.
analyzing the email of a fraudulent organization that went bust many years ago, you can actually learn about movie preferences of people at Netflix?
By using the same algorithms, yeah, it's not too much of a stretch, because there are many different questions that you can be asking, and machine learning is the tool that you're going to be using to answer them. So whichever direction you point that fire hose in is.
That's really exciting.
I'm very excited about this, and there's one thing that I do want to emphasize, which is that what we're trying to do with this data set, identifying persons of interest in the fraud. It hasn't ever been done before, as far as I'm aware. And we picked it because I think it's a really cool problem, not because I know that there's an answer that's easy to find. And so I think it's very important that that point be made, because there are lots of things out there that would be easy to solve, and this isn't one of those cases. And in fact, at the end, if there's a student who gets very into this and really starts to dig into the data on their own, they could very easily become more of an expert than I am right now. So I really hope that there are students out there who get as excited about this as I am, and make it their own project, start to engineer their own features, come up with their own ideas, and figure out how to implement them. Because while I'm setting a good example, I'm getting you off to a good start, there's no way that I'm covering all the smart ideas that could solve this, right?
This is great. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.